Have you ever heard of a train where every passenger disappeared, but the engine never stopped running? Imagine being part of the rescue team. You fight through one of the worst blizzards in American history, expecting to save frightened survivors. Instead, you open the train door. The heaters are still warm. Fresh coffee sits on the tables. Phones are still charging. A child's backpack lies in the aisle. Everything looks perfectly normal, except for one horrifying detail. Every single passenger is gone. No bodies, no blood, no signs of a struggle. Just dozens of footprints leading away from the train, and then suddenly ending in the middle of an empty snowfield. It's as if 98 people simply vanished into thin air. But here's the part that still keeps investigators awake at night. 8 months later, one passenger was found alive. He couldn't remember what had happened. He only repeated one chilling sentence over and over again. "We should never have opened the last door." So, what really happened aboard the Silver Star Express? Was it a tragic survival disaster? A psychological phenomenon? Or did those passengers witness something that should never have existed? Tonight, we're going to examine every clue, every piece of evidence, and every theory behind one of the most terrifying survival mysteries ever told. January 1997. The Silver Star Express was traveling through the snow-covered Rocky Mountains. It was the second week of January, 1997. The Silver Star Express departed from Denver just after sunrise, carrying 86 passengers and 12 crew members on what was supposed to be a routine journey through the Rocky Mountains. Families were returning home after the holidays. College students laughed in the dining car. Business travelers worked quietly on their laptops. Children pressed their faces against the windows, watching endless forests disappear beneath fresh snow. To everyone on board, it felt like an ordinary winter trip, but hundreds of miles ahead, a massive Arctic storm was moving toward the mountains. Weather stations issued urgent warnings. Wind speeds were expected to exceed 90 miles per hour. Temperatures would drop below degrees F, minus 34 degrees C. Even experienced railroad operators considered delaying the train. But the forecast suggested there was still enough time to cross the mountains before the storm reached full strength. It was a decision that would haunt investigators for decades. By late afternoon, dark clouds swallowed the sky. Snow began falling harder with every passing mile. The engineer switched on the train's powerful headlights, but visibility continued to shrink soon. He could barely see the tracks ahead. Inside the passenger cars, however, few people seemed concerned. Some passengers played cards. Others read books or watched movies. The dining car remained busy as waiters served hot coffee and dinner. No one realized they were slowly driving into one of the most violent blizzards in modern history then. At exactly 6:52 p.m. the lights flickered once, twice, then returned to normal. Most passengers ignored it, but one little girl looked toward the back of the train. Her smile disappeared. She quietly asked her mother, "Mom, why is there another train outside?" Her mother glanced through the window. All she could see was darkness and falling snow. She smiled and told her daughter she had imagined it, but several rows away, an elderly man was staring out the same window. His face had turned completely pale because he had seen it too, a row of distant lights, moving silently through the storm, keeping pace with the Silver Star Express. No tracks, no sound, just another train, appearing where no train should possibly exist at first. Only a few passengers noticed it, a faint line of glowing lights beyond the blizzard. They moved at exactly the same speed as the Silver Star Express, always the same distance away, never getting closer, never falling behind. The elderly man rubbed the fog from his window and looked again. The lights were still there. He quietly called the conductor. "There's another train outside." Conductor smiled politely. "Sir, there are no parallel tracks anywhere in this valley." The old man pointed toward the darkness. But by the time the conductor looked, the lights had disappeared. He assumed it was a reflection, nothing more. 10 minutes later, Another passenger reported seeing the same thing, then another. Soon, whispers spread through the train. "Did you see those lights? I thought I was imagining them. Where is that train coming from?" Trying to calm everyone, the conductor made an announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, there's no cause for concern. The storm may create unusual reflections in the snow. Please remain seated." For a few minutes, the whispers stopped. Then the train suddenly lurched. The emergency brakes engaged automatically. A loud metallic screech echoed through every carriage. Suitcases fell from the overhead racks. Coffee spilled across the tables. Children began to cry. The Silver Star Express came to a complete stop outside. The blizzard was now so intense that the windows showed nothing but a wall of white. The engineer contacted railway control. "We've lost visibility. Snow is blocking the tracks. We'll remain here until conditions improve." The control center acknowledged the message. It would be the last confirmed transmission from the train. As the minutes passed, something strange began to happen. Passengers sitting in different cars all reported hearing the same sound. Not from the engine, not from the storm. It sounded like someone gently knocking. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. The sound always came from the very last carriage. Crew members searched every compartment. They found nothing. No damaged equipment, no loose cargo, no one hiding. The knocking stopped then. A young railway attendant froze in the hallway. He stared toward the rear observation car. The final door, the one leading to the outside platform, was slowly opening by itself. No one was standing near it, yet icy wind poured into the carriage, as if someone or something had just stepped inside. The freezing wind swept through the carriage like a wave. Passengers instinctively covered their faces. The train had been completely sealed only moments earlier, so how had the last door opened? The conductor rushed toward it. He expected to see snow piling onto the platform. Instead, he stopped dead in his tracks outside the door. There was no platform, no railing, no blizzard, only a thick wall of white light stretching endlessly into the distance. It wasn't the light of the moon, it wasn't lightning. It was something else, something no one could explain. The conductor slammed the door shut. The light disappeared instantly. The blizzard was back. Snow and darkness surrounded the train once again. Shaken, he locked the door and ordered everyone to stay away from the last carriage. But the strange events didn't stop. Passengers in different cars began describing the same feeling, a soft voice not heard with their ears, but inside their minds. At first it was impossible to understand, then the words became clear. "Come outside." One woman quietly stood up from her seat. She smiled. Without saying a word, she began walking toward the last carriage. Her husband grabbed her arm. "Where are you going?" She slowly turned toward him. Her eyes looked empty, almost peaceful. She whispered only 4 words: "Waiting for us." Within minutes, more passengers began leaving their seats. A teenage boy, an elderly couple, a businessman, a mother holding her daughter's hand. They all walked in complete silence, no panic, no fear, as if they had all received the same invisible invitation. The crew tried to stop them, but the passengers didn't resist. They simply continued walking. Daniel Carter, the wildlife photographer, watched in horror. Everything inside him told him to run. Yet another feeling was growing stronger. A powerful urge pulling him toward the last door. His heart raced. His hands trembled. He kept hearing the same whisper, closer now, clearer than ever. "Open the last door." Daniel took one step forward, then another. He reached for the cold metal handle. His fingers wrapped around it. Just as he was about to pull it open, a little girl grabbed his coat. Tears filled her eyes. She looked up at him and whispered, "You open it. We can never come back." Daniel looked down at the little girl. She couldn't have been older than 8. Her hands were shaking so badly that she could barely hold onto his coat. "Who told you that?" he whispered. The girl slowly pointed toward the window. "They did." Daniel turned. Outside, through the blowing snow, he saw figures standing in the darkness. At first he thought they were rescue workers, but something wasn't right. They weren't moving. They stood perfectly still, lined up side by side, watching the train. The engineer counted them. There were dozens, then hundreds. As lightning flashed across the mountains, the figures disappeared. Only snow remained. Before anyone could speak, the lights inside the train went out. Complete darkness. The only sound was the howling wind outside. Then the knocking returned. Knock, knock, knock. This time it wasn't coming from the last door. It was coming from every window. Passengers screamed. Crew members switched on their flashlights. The beams swept across the glass. Nothing. Then one flashlight stopped. Tiny handprints had appeared on the outside of the window. Impossible. The temperature outside was nearly degrees F. No human could have survived there without leaving footprints. Yet dozens of frozen handprints slowly formed across the glass as everyone watched in horror. One of the windows fogged up from the outside, as if someone had breathed onto it. Then, letter by letter, a message appeared. Let US in. The room fell silent. The conductor immediately ordered everyone away from the windows. Daniel grabbed the little girl and pulled her into the center of the carriage. Then, without warning, every door on the train unlocked at the exact same moment. Click, one by one the handles slowly began to turn as if someone outside was trying to come in. Every handle on the train began turning slowly, one after another. Click, click, click. No one touched them, yet each carriage door creaked open just a few inches before stopping. An icy wind rushed through the train. The lights flickered back on. For a brief second, everyone looked outside. The figures were gone, only endless snow remained. The conductor immediately ordered the crew to lock every door again. One by one they checked each carriage. No one had entered, no one had left, or so they thought when they reached the dining car. Every chair was occupied not by strangers, by the passengers themselves. They were sitting perfectly still, hands folded on the tables, eyes fixed on the windows. No one spoke, no one blinked. It was as if time had frozen. Then, without warning, every passenger stood up at the exact same moment. They turned toward the rear of the train and began walking slowly, silently. The crew tried to stop them. Nothing worked. People simply walked around them as if they weren't even there. Daniel grabbed a young man's shoulder. Stop. Where are you going? The man didn't even look at him. He whispered only one sentence. Taking us home. The line of passengers continued toward the last carriage. Children held their parents' hands. Couples walked side by side. No fear, no panic, only complete silence. Daniel looked at the little girl. She was crying uncontrollably. Making everyone follow them, she whispered. Who are they? Daniel asked before she could answer. A deafening train horn echoed through the mountains, but it didn't come from the Silver Star Express. It came from somewhere outside, somewhere impossibly close. Daniel rushed to the window. There it was, a second train, long, black, its windows glowing with a pale white light. It glided silently across the snow, without tracks, without smoke, without making a sound. As it stopped beside the Silver Star Express, its doors slowly opened, and shadowy figures stepped onto the snow, waiting for the passengers to cross over. Daniel's heart pounded so hard he could barely breathe. The black train stood only a few feet away. Its windows glowed with a cold, pale light inside. Rows of passengers sat perfectly still. None of them moved, none of them blinked. They simply stared through the windows of the Silver Star Express. Daniel suddenly realized something terrifying. They weren't strangers. Some of the faces looked exactly like the people standing beside him. The same mother, the same little boy, the same elderly man. It was as if every passenger had another version of themselves waiting inside the mysterious train. The little girl squeezed Daniel's hand. Look into their eyes, she whispered. It's how they choose you. But it was already too late. Several passengers stepped off the Silver Star Express. No one forced them. They walked calmly through the deep snow. The blizzard no longer seemed to affect them. One by one, they climbed aboard the black train. As soon as each person entered, a figure already sitting inside disappeared, as if the newcomer had taken its place. Daniel watched in horror. It wasn't just a train. It was an exchange. The conductor shouted for everyone to come back. His voice echoed through the storm. Not a single passenger turned around. Desperate, Daniel ran after them. He grabbed the arm of a young father carrying his sleeping daughter. The man slowly turned his head for a split second. His face wasn't human. His eyes were completely white. His skin looked as pale as fresh snow. Then he smiled, a smile far too wide to be natural. Daniel stumbled backward in terror. At that exact moment, the little girl screamed. Daniel, he spun around. The last door of the Silver Star Express had swung wide open. The wind exploded through the carriage. Everything loose inside the train was pulled toward the opening. Suitcases, blankets, papers, even people struggled to keep their balance then. The black train let out one long, haunting whistle. Its doors closed, the glowing windows began moving away into the storm, and every passenger who had stepped aboard vanished with it seconds later. The mysterious train disappeared into the white blizzard. There were no tracks, no lights, nothing, only silence. Daniel collapsed into the snow. The little girl was gone. The passengers were gone. The storm swallowed every trace of them when he opened his eyes again. He wasn't on the train anymore. He was lying alone beside a frozen lake, hundreds of miles from the railway, with no memory of how he got there. Daniel was found 243 days later by a hunter in a remote valley. He was weak, barely conscious, and suffering from severe frostbite. Doctors couldn't understand how he had survived. His beard had grown only a few days' worth. His watch had stopped at 9:17 p.m. to Daniel. Only one night had passed, but according to the calendar, 8 months were gone. The investigation was immediately reopened. This time, detectives searched the Silver Star Express one final time, every seat, every compartment, every inch of the train. For days they found nothing. Then, inside the last carriage, a forensic investigator noticed a loose floor panel. Hidden beneath it was a weatherproof metal case. Inside the case, there was an old 35mm camera. The film had survived. When it was finally developed, the first photographs showed exactly what everyone expected. Passengers smiling, children laughing, snow-covered mountains. Then everything changed. The final 3 photographs made no sense. The first showed the mysterious black train parked beside the Silver Star Express. There were no tracks beneath it. The second showed dozens of passengers calmly walking through the snow toward its open doors. No panic, no fear, just silence. Then came the final photograph. Every missing passenger stood in a straight line beneath the falling snow. They were all staring at something outside the frame. Every face was expressionless. Every eye looked empty. But one detail chilled investigators more than anything else. Standing at the very end of the line was Daniel Carter. The problem was, Daniel insisted he had never crossed to the other train. He claimed he remembered collapsing before reaching it. So who had taken the photograph, and who was standing in Daniel's place? Forensic experts examined the image for months. They found no signs of editing, no double exposure, no manipulation. Then the lab reported one final discovery. The photograph's chemical aging proved it had been taken. 2 days after the rescue team had already found the Silver Star Express completely empty. That should have been impossible. The camera became the final official piece of evidence. No explanation was ever found. The case was closed with one haunting conclusion. The disappearance of the passengers aboard the Silver Star Express remains unexplained. But every winter, local hikers still claim they hear a distant train whistle echoing through the Rocky Mountains. There are no tracks, no stations, no trains scheduled anywhere nearby. Yet on the coldest nights, some people say they can see glowing windows moving silently through the blizzard, and if they listen closely, they hear a whisper carried by the wind. Open. The last door. No one knows whether it's just another mountain legend, or a warning from those who never came back. What do you think really happened aboard the Silver Star Express?